faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock tick faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock tick 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 tick. The clock tick 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 faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock 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 tick faster.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Living Off Borrowed Time podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick on RYM, joined as always by my co-host, Caleb, OptimalAudio and RYM, joined once again by some RYM royalty, possibly our first moderator. I don't know. Troutmask, Brent.
Greetings.
Not sure if you wanted me to give your real first name there, but I did anyway. You can beep that. He's beeped out things that I've said that I'm not supposed to say in the past. So
I think most people know my first name anyway at this point, so it's not like a guarded secret that my name is Brent and you can call me Brent.
Your name is your name. Shout out to Marlo. Yes. But and this week we'll be kind of continuing a previous discussion we had last week where we were charting the album anniversaries of rock albums in 2000 and 2010. Now we're kind of looking at where alternative rock is in 2020. We're looking at the charts, and we're going to kind of chart how we got to where we're at on the charts. And how good is it? What is it, really? Like, what's the identity of it? Because I don't know if I can speak for the other two people on this podcast, but alternative rock was very formative for me as a music listener. It was some of the first stuff I heard. And now I can't point to, like, I can't look at even saying the radio right now is kind of a misnomer, because who listens to the radio? But
yeah, I think the people that are getting these songs to chart are doing so via like streaming numbers and YouTube and stuff like that.
Well, actually, the Billboard chart is still mostly based off radio airplay, so it's some guy in Clear Channel's basement who's devised an algorithm for what counts as alternative now. That's basically determining that. Like, there's a rock songs chart that integrates streaming and other things into it, but the alternative chart is, I think, just airplay still.
Oh, okay. Because I know that the main chart.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm wondering then, is there rock shit that people aren't hearing that we're not hearing about on this chart, or is that the audience for rock now? Just people who would listen to the radio?
I'm guessing so, because it's still divided into the three strains. There's the alternative chart, the mainstream rock chart, and then the adult alternative chart, which is where like all your faves from 10 years ago in the indie scene have decided to live now. Like the National, Spoon, St. Vincent, that's where they get all their shit played.
And that's on primarily like satellite radio, like alternative stations, or is that mainstream?
Adult alternative stations, yeah.
Adult alternative, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And mainstream rock is the more like traditional rock stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's mostly post-grunge at this point. I don't really care about that area, so I tend to stay away from it.
Yeah.
Except things cross over into alt, but
we'd be saying the same thing about every song on that chart. It sounds like a bad Bush cover. Moving on.
It sounds like Nickelback drowned, except fronted by a drowned rat. Moving on.
Yeah, they're using auto-tune, but they'd be really offended if you pointed that out.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, there's still songs from the mainstream rock end of things that do cross over into alternatives. They don't chart well, but they do still chart. And they're generally terrible.
Can you point out a band I would know? Maybe somebody from the 90s or the 2000s that I would know that's kind of crossed over that way?
Well, like, there are bands like Seether and Godsmack who are still around from the they still exist.
Dude, they were so mid. They were the definition of like post-grunge mid.
Oh,
they
yeah.
had a song called Fine Again, and that's like the definition of their sound. It was fine. Like, it was
Yeah.
It was fine, comma, again.
Yeah, exactly.
And again. And again.
And again.
No, and back in high school, my sister actually saw them when they opened for 3 Days Grace.
That's a real killer bill, by the way.
Oh yeah, with actually the other band on the bill, like Online Crush, they're like Canadian alternative rock royalty. And she came back as like they are the only people on that bill who knew how to put on a show. Everyone else was just standing in place and playing their instruments
with backwards ball caps on.
I'm actually not sure if they were backwards ball caps. I think they were, very manicured hair, and because I mean at that point 3 Days Grace were like 20-year-olds.
They hated everything about you, but why did they
love you?
Yeah, I think judging off of and the list you sent us, Brent, was from about 2 weeks ago's.
No, that was this current week that we're recording in. July 11th, I think, is the chart date.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was there's some stuff on there that like wouldn't have been on that chart years ago for sure. Like I mean, there's straight up like pop songs on this chart.
The first thing I want to talk about is something that would have been on the chart in 2003, done by a much better band that would have still sucked. And the fact that it's on the chart right now is making a much better artist roll in their grave. Rest in peace to Lil Peep. This is my atonement for the unaired podcast episode, where somebody right now is grave robbing their style and robbing the style of much worse early 2000s emo bands. Machine Gun Kelly, Bloody Valentine.
See, the thing is that you could be talking about any of 5 different songs on the chart when saying that.
Yeah, but this song especially seems egregious to me.
Yeah.
About what I know about MGK. Like, this is... Guys, I'm about to root for Eminem. To root for 2020 Eminem to come out with some ether on MGK. Where's Quitter Part 2? Eminem rap over a mall emo song about how fucking false this is.
And the thing is, that's better than the other MGK song that charted earlier this year.
So COVID's better than fucking getting shot in the face by a cop?
I mean, yeah, it's really degrees of bad at this point, but I just felt like, there are worse. It's not as bad as it could be.
Yeah, MGK to me was always like just aggressively boring and bad, but his songs now are just actually just hideous, and for the most part. And I'm just like, why did they exist? Why is he considered alternative? Which I guess goes back to like this chart not having any clear sense of identity. But the whiplash you get in tone from some of these songs, like it's all over the place. Like I actually think the best song on this chart is the 1975 track, If You're Too Shy.
Thank you. I was thinking I would be alone in that corner.
No, that song fucking rules.
That sounds good. That I was surprised by how much I liked that song. I was surprised how much I didn't hate the number one on this, except I hate the lyrics. The lyrics are horrible, but it's 21 Pilots, so it's like this man writes like a 5-year-old who thinks he's deep.
Mm-hmm. And goes back, like we were talking before the record about my theory for why the alternative chart is kind of amorphous, and I think that 21 Pilots are kind of part of that, because they don't really have a defined sound, and yet they are one of the like marquee bands of the format. Mm-hmm. Like if you think about like 5 different 21 Pilot songs, yeah, they all sound similar, but they don't have a consistent sound to them.
Do you think that...
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just came up with something in my head that I think is kind of brilliant. Also, maybe just complete bullshit. 21 Pilots are to the alt-rock lane and we can discuss what that lane means, as to Game is to rapping. They can come up with... They can steal anyone's flow, essentially. They don't have an identity.
Yeah. Like, I think of them more as, like, Bruno Mars, because it's always just based on whoever they're imitating, how good a given song is going to be.
Yeah, like, like Bruno Mars's best stuff was when he was, like, aping James Brown and, like,
or the
Prince
Police,
and stuff.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. No, I think...
1975 kind of fall into that category, too.
Oh,
because,
for sure.
If you think about, like... Because, of course, I have the history, because this is the level of obsessive that I am. The last 6 songs that they've charted on the chart, you go from wanting to be Joy Division to wanting to be the Blue Nile to wanting to be Depeche Mode to wanting to be Refused somehow.
Wait, who were the Blue Nile? You have to fill me in on that, because I know every other band pretty well.
The Blue Nile were like 80s, 90s Sophistopop group.
So kind of like
the sort of stuff that me and Kronz will geek out over on Soulseek.
Ballet, I guess, or
kind of like that, just with more like less 80s-ness, I guess. So
like sophisticated, like Brian Eno pop, maybe, or
kind of like they're a little bit Eno-y, yeah. Like their two 80s albums are masterpieces that you should listen to right away. But
duly noted. I'll take that away from this episode. But
yeah, like they just hop from imitating like band to band to band to band, and depending on how you feel about the band they're imitating, that kind of gives you an idea of how you're going to like that song. And like their current one is basically In Excess Gone Yacht Rock, which is perfect for me.
Oh my god, no, that song, like the way that I think that song is one of their best songs, and I actually I feel like 1975 are a very hit or miss band for a lot of people, and for me it's funny because I'm like I lean positive on them, but not like hugely love or hate, which seems to be the internet and RYM as well, like consensus, where it's like I either love this band or I despise this band. I'm giving them 0.5 stars, and I'm like they're a very like 3.5 star band to me because I think their lyrics can be insufferable sometimes, but at the same time, in the same coin, like almost in the span of the same song or hook, it can turn around and be like, this is actually pretty good. And it just like like their frontman walks that line for me so many times.
Okay, two things. First of all, I can't imagine having powerful opinions about this band. They don't really elicit that out of me.
They're pretty divisive.
I don't get that. Like, I really don't.
I feel like it's one of those things like the girls who won't talk to me like this band, so by default I must hate them. Because, RAM's been overtaken by teenagers recently.
You're a mod. Do something about it. Second thing, I feel like as far as the imitativeness, first of all, this is the best song I've heard from them. I just want to say that. Like, otherwise, they've never left one impression on me one way or another. I've always just kind of lumped them in the same bucket as The National, where it's just like, yeah, they're there. They're like, they do something all right. They don't really move the needle one way or another for me. I find this song catchy.
I love the chorus.
See, I really liked their first album back in, I think it was 2013 or 2012. And there's a couple songs there, like Caleb was saying, that like the lyrics go from really insufferable to just all of a sudden there's one line or a couple lines in succession, just like, oh wow, that's what you were going for this whole time. I get it.
What other album has that? Turn on the Bright Lights, one of the best albums ever.
Interesting.
Her stories are boring and stuff. She's always calling my bluff. One of the worst lines ever next to one of the better lines ever.
I mean, like, the one I always go to for dissing the lyricism of that album is, your hair is so pretty and red, baby, baby, you're really the best, which is just two terrible lines, one right after each other. But
yeah, that's Paul Banks, man. He did. I mean, from what I've read on Meet Me in the Bathroom, there were just a lot of drugs there, and it was
not shocking.
Spit that out. So... And especially doing an Ian Curtis impression. I don't think Ian Curtis was particularly profound either. So, and a lot of what really initially grabbed me about that Interpol album was not. Also, do we think Interpol was influential on Where We Got? Speaking of, one of the things I want to do with is charting Where We Got.
To some extent. Because, like, they, like, Turn on the Bright Lights didn't actually move the needle in this area, but I think starting with Antics, they started, like, getting, like, not top 20, but close to top 20 singles. And even, like, I think they even got something off, if not their most recent album, then the one before that. Just, like, a very minor radio hit.
I think a lot of indie bands did that, because if you look at this chart, two things. One, if you look at the alt charts in recent years, and, like, even the Hot 100 in general, like, and I guess go back to, we had an Arcade Fire discussion last week, but Arcade Fire's early stuff was like big in the blogosphere and stuff, but it wasn't like mainstream big. But then they got like movie placements and soundtracks or whatever. Then their later stuff had traction, and like a lot of people listened to them. And then if you look at the Strokes, I mean, the Strokes were different. Like, they had, I guess they were more popular at the time. But like Bad Decisions is on this chart. Like, the Strokes are like a popular band, and I think their popularity only increased over time.
Which is weird considering that I don't think they had a breakout single between Last Night and Bad Decisions, more or less. I mean, well, I guess they had, well, obviously the stuff off Room on Fire, but then, like, I guess 1251 was, like, got played.
Actually, Reptilia, I think, was the bigger one off Room on Fire, which their best song, At Me.
Great song.
Great song. Yeah, great song.
Incredible.
It was cool to see Bad Decisions so high. Like, I didn't know that was going to be, like, what's that song on the chart? It's in the top 10, right?
It's number 9.
That's pretty cool.
Just real quick hot take, Room on Fire way better than the first album. So
I really need to revisit those.
Yeah.
Good album. Good album. I like that album.
It took me a little while to come to that conclusion, but I think Is This It has, like, I mean, I've espoused his opinion a lot, has like 3 perfect songs on it, and everything else orbits around that. And that people were in love with their sound and kind of wanted a rock savior the music press wanted a rock savior to save them from hip hop, and the Strokes and the White Stripes had that image, so they pushed it. And both had good songs, but the songs they're most popular for aren't their best songs. The Strokes are a better band than the White Stripes. I think Julian Solo is more interesting than the Strokes, although the most recent Strokes album is their best album.
I think I have a very like personal connection to when I was like, you know, a young teenager to Is This It? You know, when I was like 13, 14. So it's still my favorite of theirs, but their newest one is definitely close.
Yeah, I need to give it a couple more listens before I have like a firm opinion on it. But I just like, if At the Door had managed to chart on here, it would easily be the best song on this chart.
Oh, no doubt.
It wasn't going to do anything on the radio because you need to have like Bad Decisions has that like I Melt With You guitar that's going to, you know, catch everyone's eye or ear, right. I guess. But
even
just a
even
better
the
song.
First track, the first track could have charted. I feel like.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Is that Brooklyn Bridge or The Adults Are Talking? I'm trying to remember the
track. The adults are talking. Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus is track 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Either way, there's a ton of. Also, shout out to Rick Rubin for not ruining the album. You didn't ruin the album. Low clap.
He's still the better 2R producer, because when your company is Ross Robinson, you're just going to win.
Yeah, well, Ross Robinson produced the second best album of all time, so everything else he produced is irrelevant. So
I don't think Relationship with Command is quite that good, because I know that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah. I guess
the early 2000s, the Killers are still relevant. Apparently,
somehow.
You see, they're one of those like 6 out of 10 bands for me most of the time. I really like Caution though. I think it might just be like I am a sucker for a gigantic chorus, and that one just always hits.
I think that was their best. That's their best song in a while.
They had another decent one a couple of years ago. Like back when I was doing my like weekly rundown of the chart in 2018, the song that they had then was on like close to the same level.
You know what it is that, and I've been saying, I think really even their first album too, like they're consistently a pretty good singles band. Like I feel like even when their albums were bad to me or like boring, their singles were still pretty good from it. But then the album deep cuts, especially on like their their 3rd, 4th, and 5th records, like the album deep cuts were just not there. But they always put out like at least one single every couple of years. I'm like, oh, this is good. Like I like this.
Yeah.
It might just be like, hey, how much, Springsteen can we ape or whatever, but like it, Well,
that was really only the thing on Sam's Town. I think their other ones were kind of like trying to edge away from that.
Yeah, their recent stuff has been edging away from that.
Fuck's sake, I'm trying to talk. Tried to start my fucking sentence 5 times now. I'm cutting you all off. Thing is about Brandon Flowers is I feel as a songwriter, he's a big swing guy, and that's not going to work for a full album most of the time unless you have a miraculous batting average. And I don't think he ever has. I think Hot Fuzz is the closest he came, and that was 50%. And even then, in the big singles, I really, really loved Somebody Told Me. I could not stand Mr. Brightside. I felt like that was 2 sides of the same coin. And that's just how he is for me. So I'll always love a Killer song, always hate a Killer song. It's just, and that's the approach he takes, and that's the nature of the beast with him. And he's also very derivative. You're right. How much Springsteen can I ape? How much Bee Gees can I ape? How much other sounds can I take from? I don't think he really has his own identity ultimately. he has a very outside personality, but I don't think he has his own identity.
Yeah. Well, and that whole, like, not having your own personality thing is kind of a big theme of what's on the chart right now. I mean, because other than someone like Billie Eilish, who I'm sure is, like, a big part of what the chart has become,
talk about
better or worse, depending on how you think about that.
Let's talk about Billie Eilish, because I think two songs on here, I think that the lower charting song is more distinctively her. I think the higher charting song, the more ballady one, is more boring. I think that's her more trying to fit into like an Adele template that's less interesting to me. I think that I could see her compromising and making music that's more palatable to an older audience. And I think that kind of takes away what was interesting about her previous album that didn't always work on her previous album, but that was what was interesting about her sound.
Well, and the thing is that, like, that was written after the album because it was like just a random single she released at the end of the year. So it's like it may be what she's edging toward, which does not necessarily bode well. I think the song is great, personally. It's everything I wanted.
Yeah, I liked it better when I thought about it, but I also don't really like her in that mode, ultimately. I think that she doesn't have... I think the way she writes lyrics is not necessarily conducive to making interesting songs in that style. I think her voice is stronger than she gets credit for, however.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Billie Eilish, and going back to what you said a few minutes ago, Trout, about 21 Pilots, I think 21 Pilots 5 years ago and recent, probably like 2016 really and onward when they were blowing up, they, I think, set the... Because before that, from 2012 to 2016, even though they're still sort of relevant, the early 2010s and mid 2010 sound, that was like Imagine Dragons core. And then you had like 21 Pilots core, and now you have like Billie Eilish core mixed with like, who can we get on here that like sort of kind of fits this bill? Like there are acts that like would have been a lot bigger like 7 years ago, like X Ambassadors or AWOL Nation. Yeah, but then there's like
Ambassadors,
them, honestly.
Fucking X Ambassadors, fucking garbage. Like, you were on Revival. You suck. You were fucking horrible.
The X Ambassador song is unambiguously the worst song that is on the chart right now, and this is a chart that contains AJR and Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah,
that is actually... I listened to that out of morbid curiosity because I was just like, have they gotten better since Revival? I'm like, nope. They actually managed to clone Skylar Grey 4 times and make her worse.
See, and I like K-Flay generally. Or some of her solo stuff. Like, are either of you BoJack Horseman watchers?
Yes.
No, fortunately, I am not. So any references will be lost on me. But y'all go ahead.
I haven't seen the new season though. I don't know if that's what you're going to be referring to.
No, it was the episode that it's mostly about his depression, like the one where the voice in his head is given the spotlight.
I know. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
The song that's always playing when that kicks in is her first single.
Oh, okay. I have to watch it again, but I think I know the general episode of what you're talking about.
I want to cut y'all off. First of all, a show where we're on at Voice as a Depressed Alcoholic Horse sounds like exactly my lane, nothing more my lane. But there is a Major Lazer single featuring a Mumford son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we live in the worst fucking world?
The thing is, like, if you didn't tell me that was Major Lazer, I would just think it was Mumford & Sons.
Yeah.
So I asked this question in a review. I want to pose it again. Do you think Diplo ever misses having a soul?
No.
No.
He filled that void with money.
Yeah, money and pussy, pretty much. Just like, let me do another fucking bro pussy, like bro country song. Like,
I remember listening to his debut album back when he was on Ninja Tune in like 2004 and being really impressed by it. And seeing what's happened since then, it's just like, oh no.
No, fucking Florida's a great album. Top ranking with Santa Gold and Piracy Funds Terrorism with MIA. 3 fantastic fucking albums. Diplo was very important to the club music scene in Philly. But he sold it the fuck out.
I mean, sold out. And then
Diplo is going to get Me Too'd, by the way. Diplo is going to get so Me Too'd because he was like getting trolled for his horrible comments on women's Instagrams in 2011. So there's a paper trail there. Fuck you, Diplo. Fuck your fucking... Like, I'm glad Orville Peck got paid because he's cool, but And also, shout out to Lil Nas X for not, like, he took his money for the remix, but he didn't do an original song with him. You know, Diplo was like, yo, man, let's do an album. Lil Nas X had too much integrity. Lil Nas X has so much more integrity than Diplo.
and he didn't have to. And it's just like, I will say, going to your point, like, it's amazing that Diplo's on the chart, but the other stuff that I can see here, like, there are legitimately artists that have no relation to alternative rock. Like, there is a rapper on the charts. Now, granted, the song
NBA song is a rock song, actually. It's a terrible rock song, but at least it's a rock song.
Well, no, but I mean,
we're talking about 20K Golden. Or
24K Golden is a rapper who I knew of last year because he was, or it might have been early this year, but his song Valentino was getting a lot of traction on the big Spotify rap playlist. So I like listened to it and I was like, this is mid, whatever. Like, I don't care that much. But I saw that song City of Angels and I was like, wait a minute, how is he on the alt rock? So I listened to like his little EP, and once again it was mid. But that song was actually, I think, the best song on that EP. It wasn't bad. It was a decent song. It sounded like but I couldn't get out of my head that it sounded like a rapper doing, not like Blink-182 and not playing around with like emo tropes like you know, Lil Peep, Juice WRLD, stuff like that. It was more kind of like a Trippie Redd cosplay sort of song, where like Trippie Redd has that really unique voice and he can, like, you know, go over kind of production that blends rap and rock occasionally. Like, he's done that before, right? You know, a couple years ago.
Redd, I would say Chippy. Shout out to Chippy from John Thorne's label. Trippie Redd and Sheck West, I think, are two really lost causes that could have been great. But I think
Trippie Redd's album last year was really, really boring, and that was like the problem. Is I like
it sounds like everybody else now.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, when he came up in his first few mixtapes, he was like a really unique presence, and I liked him a lot. And even his I remember when like Topanga came out, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be, and it was like a big song, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, he's gonna blow up. Like, he's still good. But then, like, he just kind of, I mean, who knows? Maybe it was a one-off, but I feel like he's kind of, his name has faded a little bit in popular consciousness because everything moves so quickly in hip-hop these days that, like, you have to be hyper-relevant or be, like, you know, Drake, and you can chill however you want and then drop something and everybody will listen to it.
Like, just chill back and then just steal somebody else's style and then just come back.
Right, exactly.
I'm at the point where I'm ashamed that Drake is Canadian. So,
I mean, you know, it is what it is.
We've been very Canadian lately on the podcast. We're having Diction on soon. We got you on now. We were talking about Arcade Fire last week. I tried to start an Arcade Fire versus Sunset Rubdown beef, which I'm still waiting for the returns on that. But I think it's really big.
This is where I can flex my, you know, being in the know about Arcade Fire. One of my older Soulseek friends, he basically forced their first EP into all of us in the chat room that we were in at that point. So there were a bunch of us that, like, in 2000 we were like, okay, this band's next album is going to be massive. So we were ahead of the curve on that one.
That's pretty because their EP came out a year or two before.
You were the bat that started COVID, basically.
Sorry,
you were the bat that started COVID.
Yeah, I will take all the blame.
Yeah, Patrick was every single time he can get a chance to shit on Arcade Fire, it's gonna be a slam dunk for him.
Well, I mean, like, they're terrible now. Like,
they're terrible.
Like, the one single of theirs that was on this chart when I was doing my weekly thing, like, every time I heard it, it's like, I hate this more and more every time I hear it. You do not get to humble brag about people using Funeral as a suicide soundtrack. You fuckwad.
No,
you know who else brags about fucking suicide songs? Logic.
Wait,
here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that if the buzz around Supermarket hadn't been as toxic as it was last year, Logic would be on this chart.
That's what I was about to ask you. I didn't monitor this chart last year, so I thought that Logic could have made this chart with Supermarket.
He probably, if it weren't for just how bad the buzz around that album was, he probably could have, but he did not. Thank God.
Thank Fantano, I guess. Thank you, Melon God, for.
Yes, we all must make our sacrifices to the Melon God.
Yes. What I'm trying to think of because we laughed Trout about Blackbear being on this chart, which is essentially Blackbear is just like the white girl soundtrack for 2020.
And he doesn't need to be on that song.
His song last year,
first of all, the song sucks. Song trash, by the way. Song trash.
Yeah. But he even like with or without Blackbear, the song would be exactly as good. I would think Blackbear would make things worse, and he didn't, which is weird.
Yeah, Blackbear, I first became aware of him in, I want to say it was like 2018, and I was like, why is this a thing? And then last year when the Hot Girl Bummer song like broke out, I was like, okay, why is this really
Wait. This motherfucker has a song called Hot Girl Bummer.
Yep.
It was a top 20 pop hit.
Hang on.
It was a huge song.
I've never heard of this.
Because I heard that Do Re Mi song from a few years ago. That was the first song I heard of.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard about it.
3 years in my apartment drinking whiskey, and then I could afford weed again. Then I started smoking weed, not leaving my apartment. Hot Girl Bummer Blackbear. Okay, give me a minute. Shout out Wawa after Wawa. Wawa sponsor us. Fuck no! Oh, I've heard this shit. Oh, this was hard. Oh, I hate this fucking song. Oh, I've heard this shit. Oh yeah, no, fuck that.
That was about as quick a fuck off as I've seen recently.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, that song is fucking toxic waste. I hear that shit all the time. Yeah. That's what it's called? I never knew that's what it's called.
Well, because it was a response to Hot Girl Summer, apparently.
Ugh. Oh, yeah. Cool. That's like when some guy who thought that No Scrubs was about them came out with No Pigeons.
Oh.
Yeah, that happened. You can look that up.
Fucking Eve was in that video, if I'm remembering right. Like, early 2000s rapper Eve was in that video.
Yeah, I don't want no pigeons, because a pigeon was a female version of a scrub.
Yeah, Blackbear is god awful. I was just so.
Yo, fuck Blackbear for stealing what's that? SEO from Bareface, from the only good member of Brockhampton who has not been Me Too'd yet, but he probably will. So,
yeah, definitely, very, very different guy. Very, very different.
There's also a whiskey called Bareface that's brewed down in Kelowna, like 6 hours south of me. That's actually quite good.
So what we're saying?
Good name for a whiskey. Good name for a whiskey. Bad name for a fucking artist. Bad fucking artist. What else on here is Palfu featuring BDOBBB. Like, who named this shit? Like, did you write this in poop? Like, did you literally scrawl this out of your diaper? Your diaper? Like, what the fuck? Coffee for you? Like, okay.
Fuck! I know this song.
Okay.
No!
Well,
it's
like on the alt charts.
Song.
Oh, sorry. On the alt charts, it's just called Deathbed, but they added the subtitles because it was getting played on pop radio, and you can't, have a song called Deathbed in, quote unquote these times on the radio.
This is Varg has a great review of this where he said it was rap for Jason Mraz fans, and that's exactly what it is. This is the big TikTok song.
Okay, first of all, it's sang by what? I don't know what this font is. The font makes me really mad in the lyric video. It sounds like Chance the Rapper took a Xanax and sang this shit. Oh.
Well, and the thing is that it's also one
fucking the rapper Xanax rap.
And it's trying to do the stand thing of just playing the song underneath and saying that that's your sample.
Yeah.
Because that's like a 3 or 4 year old song from the Biba Doobie or however you pronounce her name.
I don't know. Fucking Ghostface can do that. He can play like "La La Means I Love You" and then rap good over it. This is not Hollow. Okay, no.
No, that song is
on the radio. This is on the radio.
Apparently.
I mean, that's not the first thing on this list, but it's pretty bad. That guy's voice is really annoying. he definitely sounds like Chance trying to be a Zan rapper. That's two things I really don't like being combined. Like, once again, like I said on a previous episode, get the peanut butter out of my codeine. Like, no one needs this shit. Let's talk about the Weezer song. Weezer continues to not write any good songs. This is just as bad as anything off the fucking Green Day album. So,
yeah,
River as Billy Joe Armstrong, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, at least they're not leaning into the whole "oh, we don't use Swedish songwriters" marketing thing that Green Day did.
Once again, they should hire some fucking Rivers should hire Max Martin. It might help.
I'm surprised that they haven't collaborated, honestly.
I don't know. Look at fucking Ratitude. Like, I know Ryan Adams wrote one song. Shout out to one fucking abuser working with another.
Did real quick? Did Green Day chart this year? Trout, do you know? Okay, yeah.
They actually had like a 1 week number one.
And then it like fell off quick.
It felt well. The thing with the way that Billboard does tries to force diversity on this chart. I mean, I hate that I have to use that term, but it's really what they're doing. Basically, in order to keep things flowing in and out of the chart, they have like set limits. Like if you haven't reached the top 20 by your 20th week, you're just not counted for. You go to recurrent, you're not counted on this chart. If you don't hit the top 15 by the 26th week, you're out of this chart. If you manage to make it to the top 10 and you can stay in there, you can fucking barnacle your way through like 70 fucking weeks on the chart. Because as long as you're in the top 10, you will get played on the radio. So they're they're killing slow burn songs and just letting like that Billie Eilish song, Everything I Wanted. It's been on the chart for like 31 weeks. That's a short span for major songs on this chart.
Right. And I imagine that
organic way to craft a chart, first of all. They're absolutely trying to shape the narrative, but that's been the story of radio for all time, and obviously that's why terrestrial radio is dying, because they're trying to tell people what they want to hear, which is honestly how radio has always worked to a point, but now it's just being blatant about it, kind of like the government.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did you try? I mean, I imagine because the Tame Impala song that's high on here came out in like the first week of January, right? So has it been charting?
It's been here since I think it debuted the last week of January or sometime like very early in the year, and it seems to still be gaining, which is good because I love that song.
I really like that song. Don't people dislike that song? Don't people think Tame Impala sold out, quote unquote, or whatever? Like, isn't there like Heat on Kevin?
Well, he's finally stopped pretending that it's 1967, so that's probably enraged a bunch of his fans. But I mean, I'm here for it.
I thought it was good. It's like a sound that I don't want to hear every band doing, but I think they do it well. Again, I would put them in the same sort of class as the 1970 or whatever, in that I never really gave them much of the time of day until I listened to this list. And I probably heard them in the past, and I thought of them as like, well, I might as well just listen to my Morning Jacket. And then later, if I heard them recently, I'd be like, well, I'd rather just listen to King Gizzard. But by the way, I'm surprised I'm not seeing King Gizzard on here. I thought they would show up for something because I thought they had that sort of push, and they were always in like a bunch of different genres. So I thought one of those would have kind of broken, but I guess they're not that big.
I think that it's mainly like they may be that big in Australia, but I don't think that they've crossed over to the US quite that way yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Tame Impala, I think the argument for them is they're probably the biggest rock band in the world right now. That isn't Imagine Dragons.
Really? Well, I mean,
they're pretty big, right? I mean, they're huge.
There's also been like backlash for them basically since their this most recent one, but the one before that came out.
Yeah, Currents.
Yeah.
I remember there being a backlash where it was just like, oh, he did something different. But similar to the backlash to, I guess, the Bon Iver album. Also, it was nice to not have to listen to Bon Iver, because when Bon Iver is not around Kanye West, I can't stand him. Or the first or Frama, which I actually like. But beyond that,
because I remember like that mid-decade Pitchfork list had both Tame Impala albums on it, and then none of them showed up on the decade end list. So there was obviously like some narrative that got reshuffled at that point. It's like, oh, Tame Impala don't matter anymore.
Well, I think it was because I know Currents did well critically, and for the record, I think that's their best record actually. But I think with this newest one, they had reached that point of like popular saturation where they're so huge and everybody knows them that I think there was bound to be a backlash where it's like they could have dropped something. I mean, I think the album's like decent, but they could have dropped something like really good and people still would have been like, this is mid because it's the name on it. You know what I mean? And that just happens to bands, I think.
Well, and like to bring it back to the Strokes discussion earlier, I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Room on Fire back in 2003.
Fair enough. Anything they dropped. The thing was, the Strokes had a very much. Honestly, I kind of even thought that, although at the time, but I was just very disinclined towards their sound, I guess. I thought it all sounded the same. I loved Hard to Explain, but I thought that most of their music kind of sounded the same. I didn't realize that every time I heard 1251, I loved it. And it took me revisiting it years later, removed from the hype push. But I felt like the hype push behind Room on Fire wasn't as strong. I felt like they were kind of set up to have that, like, and that's the narrative. Like, they were set up for the classic album. Like, you know, they came out, they were cocky, they had a classic first album, they had their Illmatic, whatever. Then they had the sophomore slump, and I guess they're still fulfilling that narrative. They had the late album triumph, the late career triumph with Rick Rubin. So,
yeah, interesting that like
standing and did not get enough credit at the time. I feel like it's something I wanted to kind of bring an analog to in the previous episode I was just listening to before this podcast was Meteora with Linkin Park, not equivalent bands necessarily, but I think they were both accused of making the same album twice after a hugely successful first
that
album.
Is not what Meteora was at all. Speaking from like its actual content, not the narrative behind it at the time, but like that is not the same album as Hybrid Theory. I don't know how anyone can say that.
But I think that the singles they went with, even though, again, they did not go with a non-representative first single that time, which was good. They didn't go with a One Step Closer. But overall, the album was kind of received as doing the same thing twice, which it wasn't. And I think it is more removed from the first album than Room on Fire is from. But I think they were both refinements of the formula that the band crafted on the first album that were just not taken as the band getting better, more as the band repeating themselves because they were primed for a fall by a press that just kind of wanted to impose their own narrative on it, is the way I see it.
For Meteor, I feel like if they had released Breaking the Habit as a second single instead of the fifth single, that probably would have reversed whatever narrative was building.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah. Like, I still hear it because at my job, I work in receiving, and the receiver always has our local rock station on, and every so often that'll come on, and just like, this doesn't sound like it belongs on rock radio, but I'm so glad to hear it every couple of days.
Was Meteor Rick Rubin?
Maybe? Let me just pull that up.
Yeah, check that out. It's a very clean production that I really like, and I've liked more with time. I think that Hybrid Theory's production is sometimes great and sometimes distracting. Whereas I think Meteor's production is really appealingly clean.
Self-produced, apparently. I don't see Rick Rubin's name on here.
They did a great job with that. I think
with Andy Wallace mixing, so that's probably a big part of it.
I think Paper Cut and Breaking the Habit are probably their two most well-produced songs. I really love the way those songs sound.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how we got on the topic of Linkin Park, but
I mean, Linkin Park definitely influenced a lot of like alternative music. I mean, I think so anyway.
Well, I think Linkin Park influenced Peep. I think Peep is an influence on this chart.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can hear it. You can really hear it.
I mean, the MGK song is direct Peep bite, and that makes me fucking angry. But,
I mean, the 24K Golden song is kind of that too. Suburban, kind of, sorta. I doubt, like, that one you don't need to listen to. It's terrible. But it's kind of, like, he's less of the rapper end of Peep and more of the singer end.
Yeah, and I think...
like male Billie Eilish, I guess, would be the other way to talk about him.
I think the thing with Peep's influence is that because a lot of Peep's music was like, you know, obviously fusing the lines between the two genres or subgenres, but what he also did was there were times where he would just rap like straight over, you know, some like muted guitars in the background or something, and there wasn't much of like a quote unquote like beat there. And so I feel like it almost approached like the alt rocky singer songwriter type thing occasionally. So I feel like, I mean, he merged, depending on the project, was doing a lot of different things. Like the song where he raps over the like 19, where he's rapping over the Modest Mouse sample, is a lot different than when he's, you know, rapping about like, or on like his California Girls EP, where that's like the cloudiest thing he ever did. So I think all of his different fusions impacted all, like you can hear what impacted alt rock and what impacted like hip hop.
See, I never got into Lil Peep when he was alive, or even like after his death. Like I couldn't get on the same wavelength as it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, I mean, it's fair.
I understand what you're saying.
Clearly.
I mean, I like a lot of like emo music, so it wasn't like a huge jump for me to like. The only Lil Peep project I had heard before he died, I heard Hellboy. Didn't really give it much of a second thought. I thought it was like whatever. And I heard Castles too, which I really liked. But the problem was I didn't give like Hellboy its fair shake. So after his death, I went back and listened to a lot of his stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is a lot better. And then he just kind of became like an important artist for me in this current, like, you know, last few years of like, you know, quote unquote like emo rap or rap that emotes, like that sort of thing. So I think, but to your point, you can hear his influence on the charts. Whether you necessarily like that or not is a whole other story.
Well, I think the problem is that these are pale imitators. First of all, yes, I was not into Peep when he was alive. I made misguided comments about him faking his depression, which were clearly off base. I was not necessarily receptive to the way that his music was being composed. I did not really appreciate his music until after he passed, and then I listened to both the Castles EPs, which I did not listen to while he was still around. I thought that he and Tracy had great musical chemistry together. I really liked the backing on those. That I thought that was more appropriate than I still don't like Hellboy. Hellboy does nothing for me. But
I think the only full project of his that I actually listened to was Crybaby, because Varg was pushing that a while ago.
Yeah, that's I mean, 19's on there, which is the one where he goes over the Modest Mouse. That's one of my favorite songs of his. But there's a bunch of like songs like that on that tape. It's pretty like
worth going back to. It's just I'm in the middle of my big 1992 re-listening project, which is taking up all of my spare listening time right now. So going back to revisit things like this, it's getting backburnered until I get that shit done with.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, the thing with Peep is he everything, a lot of things that he does, like it's very, very sincere, but you might not know that going in or on the first few listens. So it might seem like, oh, you know, like I know there were reviews on the site of like, you know, about insincerity or like, you know, this is a cash grab or whatever, but like, nah, I mean, he might be rapping over Wonderwall on one of the songs, but he's literally like doing it like with sincerity and like earnestness. Yeah. And so you just have to be up for that or not. I think it's an aesthetic thing.
Yeah. And then, like, the point you made about, like, earnestness, I think that's one of the things that I'm really glad to see kind of coming back to the alt chart after Imagine Dragons kind of sucked it all away. Like, one song we haven't talked about, the KennyHoopla song, How Will I Rest in Peace, So I'm Buried by...
Horrible shit. That was
come on.
Oh, no. Dude, that was, like, my least favorite song on the list. I hated that shit. That was bad.
Hey, what can I say? I'm a sucker for like some like 2000s punk sometimes, and it's very much like but like the feeling of that on that song is it's palpable. Like it's not someone striving to express every emotion thus, but like I love that song. We're gonna beef over this, Patrick.
Also,
I am in the middle because I have
interlude. Pause for interlude. Trout has really bad opinions about the life of Pablo.
I do. I fully admit this.
Do you generally like Kanye? Only we could have a Kanye discussion on an alternative rock thing, but do we?
I warned Caleb about this ahead of time. I did not warn you about this, but you had to see this.
Well, yeah, given your response to me in the recent Kanye thread, I figured that this might come up. No, like I like Kanye more as a producer than as a rapper. I think Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is probably as good as he can get as a full artist. I think Life of Pablo is a fucking slog until you get to Wolves. I tried so many fucking times with that album. We will not believe me, Patrick. I tried so many times to see what everyone else was talking about with that thing.
Beam does not move you. Ultralight Beam doesn't move you?
It like that was, I think it's just that, like, the hard cut from that to Father Stretch My Hands, where it's talking about bleaching his fucking asshole. It's like, there's just so many wild, like, tonal inconsistencies from song to song on that album, and shit, like, I can't even finish part 2. I'm just gonna drop Panda in here without any sort of, artfulness or finesse. The fucking Taylor Swift line on Famous, like, it's just a whole bunch of shit like that just gets under my skin, and
God damn it. All right. No, I never I didn't know any of the shit about the rollout or whatever, and I was just going on a walk with my dog, and I just had downloaded the album, and I didn't know the Taylor line was coming. I stopped. I laughed so hard. I was crying laughing when that line came in.
Here's the thing. I think Life of Pablo, in the general Kanye discography, I'm kind of surprised that it's as polarizing as it is, because, or I mean, maybe not on the general online, maybe just the website, but I feel like it's an encapsulation of any era of Kanye that you can think of and thrown in a blender, which I guess can be bad, if you're not into Kanye from albums 1 to, what was he? It was 1 to 6 at the time?
He literally calls you out on that with, I miss the old, like, I love Kanye.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
He's aware of this.
Oh no, it was definitely an album that, like, 90% of it connected with me on first listen, and then just in time the parts that didn't connect did. But I can see the, like, hey, I don't like how fragmented this is, or how scattershot it seems like, or all over the place. Even though,
like, honestly, if he hadn't dropped the Arthur Russell sample on No More Parties in LA, I probably would have just written the entire thing off.
Well, first of all, the Arthur Russell sample is on FML.
Oh shit, I forgot. I thought it was, yeah.
No More Parties in LA is the Mad Lib. Yeah.
Where he rapped for 3 minutes better than he's almost ever rapped in his life, except for White Dress.
Probably, yeah. Probably. Well, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
Real Friends? I'm going to let you finish, but Real Friends is one of the best songs of all time.
Like I said, like, the last third of that album almost gets me back on, because, I think FML is great. I think No More Parties in LA is great. I think Fade is great. I think Wolves is one of his best songs. But it's everything leading up to that. It takes so long to get to the Fireworks Factory that it's almost not worth it to go back to the album as a whole, as far as I'm concerned. That's just, that's my take. I'm leaving it at that.
Well, I think everything comes up Millhouse on this album from the start. So.
And there's the Simpsons references. We have done our job.
Exactly. We inappropriately screeched the episode to a halt to talk about Kanye, and then I'm inappropriate Simpsons references. So, but no, I'm sorry. Like, I get your opinion on it, but I had to call you out. Like, I just had to.
Yeah, I figured it was coming. I was bracing myself for when it would happen. I didn't think it would be coming out of KennyHoopla, but I figured it would happen at some point.
Oh yeah. Okay, back to this song. This song fucking sucks. I don't know why you like it. I don't understand your appeal. Like, I don't understand the appeal of this song. His the lyrics are garbage. His delivery on it is garbage. Yeah, Famous lyrics are terrible, but this is great. What?
I have not heard the song, so I can't. I have to be a moderator here between the two of you.
Well, like, to the point, I don't like the way that the song is produced, but I feel like it's one of those things. Like, if you heard this live, it would probably do something more for it. Because, like, it's got the canned drums, it's got, like, kind of fake hand claps. His vocals are kind of, like, over the top and peaking in the mix. But, like, there's something about, like, the line, you dress up from like an African American singer, like, you dress so nice, you look like a dead man. That just, like, it as a white person, I just hear it's like, oh, okay, I am not part of this conversation.
That's a great line. I also didn't know he was black.
Yeah.
I
think the video, because I was watching most of these through YouTube, so every so often I'd, like, tune into the video, and I'm pretty sure that the video is just a riff on Get Out, because of course, but.
Really?
Yeah. I watched the lyric video, actually. I mean, I had the lyric video on. I generally went with the lyric videos because they loaded quicker. So I didn't watch, like, I actually watched the 21 Pilots video. It was really annoying. I watched the Weezer video and I wanted to bang my head against a wall, so I stopped watching the videos for things after that. Like,
I would generally have them going in another tab while I was doing other things and just kind of check in periodically when, like either something like is like, what the hell is this that's going on, or like, okay, I want to like pay more attention to this, so I'll actually have like some visuals that are quote unquote representative going on at the same time.
Billie Eilish did a visualizer for the Yo Milo one, which, by the way, reminds me of a track called Yo Milo off of So the Flies Don't Come, which is a really cool track where he responds to tweets and or imaginary tweets. Shout out to Rap Ferrara, one of the best albums this year. But yeah, but every time I read the title of that song, I'm like, wait, is Milo on this song? He's not. That would be cool, though. Billie Eilish, get Milo on your song.
I feel like they would work well
together. Actually raps over a oh no, it's a Lorde track. Never mind. It's a Scallops Hotel song over a Lorde song. But Billie Eilish reminds me of Lorde, so that's why I got confused.
Yeah, I feel like Billie Eilish is kind of the modern update of Lorde.
Mm-hmm. It's like weird that you're modern because they're like a year apart.
Yeah.
Do you
like the other weird thing that's always in the back of my head when you think about Billie Eilish is that all of her music is produced by a former Glee cast member?
Yes.
Did not know that. Very weird. Did not know that. Very cool.
Yeah, I was actually trying
Cordova Street. That's the only Glee cast member I know because
I think like her brother was just in like the final season or something, but still like it's when you phrase the tidbit that way, it comes across way more, what than it probably actually is.
I know that she worked with her brother, and that's part of the whole quote-unquote industry plant thing. So
for fuck's sake. Do not get me started on the whole industry plant thing.
The only industry plant we call an industry plant is Joyner Lucas.
It's true.
I mean, I'd be much more forgiving of it if it was more applied to people like Joyner Lucas and Lil Baby and probably Lil Nas X too, like as much as he's been a force for good in the culture, probably some sort of industry plant thing going on there. But the fact that it only ever gets applied to female artists and not even necessarily popular ones at that, because like the first person I heard referred to as an industry plant in like normal conversation was Clairo, who I am only just hearing about because of like seeing like a song because of this chart. So
I was gonna say
she did a piss poor job of planting her.
She planted that in the shade, guys. But I would say X. Well, the funniest thing about that was it's like, oh yeah, how did he get a 9 Inch Nails sample if he's not an industry plant, huh? Yeah, Ghost was released under a Creative Commons license. Those are free.
Yeah, I'll admit to making that. It was mainly as a joke on how it's always female artists who get called out for being industry plants when there are all these male artists who just spring up out of nowhere to get all the every single thing handed to them. Juice WRLD, rest in peace, would be another one.
Shawn Mendes, by the way.
Oh yeah, that would be my biggest.
But there was always it was always obvious with him. It's not there. The thing that when people say industry plant is that they're talking about, they were trying to make this person's start look organic or whatever. There was never anything organic about Shawn Mendes' Upstart. He was marketed as the new Bieber from day one.
Yeah, and another Canadian.
Yeah, well that's part of it.
He's Canadian.
I know that.
I'm learning a lot.
Didn't he got big off Vine, right? That was the whole.
He got big off Stitches. That song where he does the most annoying pronunciation.
No, but I mean Vine, like the app, like the proto TikTok.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm learning so much on this episode.
Vine was the
original... Vine. I thought you said Vine.
Oh no, Vine with a V. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember Vine. That was in the long ago before some of us had to wear masks. Shout out to everybody when I went to go get lunch who wasn't wearing a mask, including the one asshole teenager who was like, I have a medical condition. Ha ha ha. Yeah, you're about to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna tap out of this. I'll just say where I live has managed to. We have not had a new reported case of COVID in a month at this point. So fingers crossed. All it takes is one asshole coming through to go to Alaska to fuck this all up. But because even though the border's closed, apparently if you go up to the border and say that you're heading to Alaska, they will let you through.
That seems just a lot of intelligence going on there.
Really, Palin hasn't fucked this up for y'all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, I'm far enough from Alaska and also far enough from the U.S. border. The thing, we only had, I think, we topped out at 65 cases, and that's for like the entire northern half of British Columbia. Like if you break out your World Atlas or whatever, like our health region covers a huge amount of ground, not a huge population, but still, like, if not for, I think it was a dental hygienist convention in Vancouver that started it coming up here, we probably could have like gotten away with being outside of it. But like we're still doing the work up here. We're still wearing our masks. We're still like bleaching the shit out of every surface known to man.
We're using bleach too.
I mean, we're almost drinking bleach at this point, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it has been recommended by your glorious leader, has it not?
I mean, we're obeying that. What inspired Kurt Cobain to come up with the title of the Bleach album was he saw the billboard that said "Bleach Your Works." We're doing that. We're bleaching. We're steady bleaching in America.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we're still doing it up here too, even though we're if you want to look at it one way, we're out of the woods. But if you want to look at it another way, it could go south at any moment, and we know that.
Funny thing is, I've been listening. I listen to every podcast that we do, and eventually it always just gets dark at some point.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the times we live in.
It really is, and I think going back to the chart discussion, there was a thing that I wanted to point out to you, Brett, where it was like the stuff on the chart that isn't inspired by like 21 Pilots or Billie Eilish, what have you, or even Lil Peep, like we talked about, is stuff that like would have been hot in like 2012 or 2013. Like there are songs on here from Cage the Elephant, Milky Chance, which had a big song like 8 years ago, I think, in the U.S.
Wait,
Neon Trees is on here.
And the thing is, like, a lot of these artists are like they always chart on here and nowhere else. Like Cage the Elephant have always, like, every single of theirs has gone top 10 at least.
Yeah,
I think,
and they're at least bigger. Cage the Elephant at least have more popularity than like Neon Trees, who had like one song.
2 songs actually, if you want to call
two.
Because Everybody Talks was the thing. Although like the in-store radio at my old job really liked a couple of their like other singles that were less good, like one that was like very unintentionally stalkery, and one that was like a collaboration with some like big room EDM producer that was pretty terrible. But like their recent stuff has been like more in the line with Animal and Everybody Talks, so I mean it's fine. They're another like solid 6 out of 10 band, mostly.
Interesting. I have not listened to them outside of their 2 singles because I just never. They never were like. I never was inspired to check them out. But it's just funny to me seeing them on the chart and seeing like fucking Blue October on the chart or like. Stuff like it's just so funny to me that like this stuff I wouldn't even know it existed unless I saw it on the chart.
Yeah, I think that's like a theme for a lot of like, especially the older artists and even some of the newer ones. Like they are created specifically to chart on this chart and nowhere else.
Right.
Yeah,
I wonder how much like that makes you.
The definition of algorithm music, right? Like they literally build this purpose.
And like I think that's another reason why, like, to go back to the KennyHoopla song, that's another reason why it stood out to me is because like it didn't seem like it was designed to fit any specific algorithm.
I will say that
even some of the better songs on here, like the Glass Animal song was another one that I really like, but even that sounds kind of like it's got like weird like East Indian flute samples, but it still sounds kind of like algorithm music.
I will say that for the Kenny song is that I hated it, but it sounded distinctive. It sounded like it wasn't crafted in a laboratory.
Yeah.
Oh, that is to its credit. Like, I couldn't stand it. I would never listen to it
again.
Like,
and more power to you. Like, if we all agreed on everything, this would be a really fucking boring podcast.
Yeah. I would say that one point I wanted to get to that I just remembered now was that I think it points to the influence of album that we talked about last week, the Modern Equimini, Rebirth. In that, yeah, you're talking about how a lot of this shit sounds like early 2000s, like emo, processed guitar, Blink-182, those sort of hooks, those sort of pinched vocal, fuck you, I won't clean up my bedroom, dad type shit. I mean, that's never going to go away. I feel like it's just gotten more and more in the vein of actually what Wayne was doing on that album, that really simplified rapping, those sort of primary color emotions. Maybe Wayne was onto something.
I mean, I think Wayne definitely influenced emo rap, I think, more than this sort of thing. Because I think this sort of thing is more pulling from the primary source, like you just said, with the maybe not even as far back as Blink-182, but bands in that vein over the years. Maybe later Blink-182. Like stuff like that. I feel like
the only reason MGK is here is because he's got Travis Barker producing him now.
Right.
I wonder if Travis Barker misses having a soul.
Probably not. Well, I mean, he probably looked at Tom off chasing UFOs and Mark trying to cling to relevance by making the Alkaline Trio worse, and was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just gonna work with MGK now.
Because Alkaline Trio actually used to be good.
Yeah, and it pains me that that's what Matt Skiba's doing now, is trying to replacing Tom DeLonge and modern Blink-182, who are terrible and will never be good, I don't think.
No, there's no, there are some good Blink-182 songs. I would never listen to a whole Blink-182 album. I never bought a whole Blink-182 album, but I can admit they had some good songs. Although, my wife will always get mad about, she saw a live Blink-182 performance. I don't remember what the context was, but she was like, do they know how to play their instruments? These are very simple songs. And if you remember Angels and Airwaves, they tried to do modern fucking symphonic prog shit. They were trying to do really complicated, bombastic U2 Bono shit.
Yeah, the most recent Angels and Airwaves song that I heard was very much going into the whole 80s revival thing that's kind of going on right now. It sounded like it could have, other than the very modern production job, it could have come right out of 1984. New wave shit. But
any of them had any original ideas. I think that Travis has been a part of a few good hip hop remixes. Actually, he did a mixtape prior to his hip hop Rolodex album, which was not very good. That was actually surprisingly decent. It had a good Lupe verse on it. It had a fun Waka verse on it. You would be surprised the level of verses he was getting out of surprisingly competent rappers. But I don't know. Travis seems like a culture vulture to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and speaking as someone who grew up with a younger sister who loved Blink-182, I have probably heard full Blink-182 albums, albeit, through a wall or something, and you don't need to. You're fine with the singles.
And speaking of people who exploit suicide songs, all of them have used the fact they wrote Adam's song to get a blowjob.
Oh, yeah, that's a depressing thought.
Yeah, this podcast keeps getting darker, but...
I will say, so back to... And this has some relevance because you just brought up the Suicide songs and obviously Logic's song, which was not just an alternative hit. It was a huge mainstream hit. But songs like that being classified as alternative or being in the alternative bucket, Trout, what do you think that says about where the chart is or the lack of identity or what have you?
Well, the theory I have is that Clear Channel is basically using whatever alternative playlists they produce as a testing ground for slightly less than normal pop songs. Because if you look at in the last couple of years, you've had the Panic at the Disco songs that got massive and would not go away. Those started on the alternative charts. Yeah, they're crap. As someone who kind of halfway defended Panic at the Disco over Fall Out Boy until their most recent album, that was a real slap in the face. I was somewhat complimentary to you for a decade after anyone else should have been, and this is what you fucking do to me. But there was a couple other ones that horrible Lovely the Band song Broken that managed to somehow be a pop hit was it's managed to stick around the alternative chart for 71 weeks or something.
Oh God, yeah.
And Billie Eilish too. Before she broke through on the pop chart, she You Should See Me in a Crown was big on alternative.
Yeah, that was from that EP she did, right?
No, that was it was the first single from When We All Fall Asleep.
Oh, well, that was the first single. Okay.
First single 6 months out from the album release, so it was it was kind of like a test balloon because it barely cracked the Hot 100 first, and then it went top 10 on alternative, and then they started rolling out all the other singles on top of that. I think Bury a Friend started on alternative before it crossed over to pop. Bad Guy kind of went up both simultaneously. I don't think Ilo Milo or When the Party's Over never touched alternative, I don't think. But it was that's like a big part of the theory is like they're using this to test the viability of things that could be pop songs if like the culture can move in their direction a little bit, which is where I get to sacrifice whatever credibility I've ever had and say that the other example of this recently is Dance Monkey, a good song that everyone hates for no I understand why people hate it, especially because of overplay, but it's a fun song. I can't resist it. I'm a horrible person. People
really hate that song. I just think it's like, I mean, I don't really care about it much. I don't think it's good, but I can't say I've listened to it a lot. Like
I feel like listening to it a lot would probably kill whatever I enjoy about it currently, because like hearing it like every couple of weeks when it was at its peak of popularity, because like neither place that I work plays the pop station in town. So it's just like every so often I'd go into like a restaurant and there it is, sort of thing. And it was, it was fun. It was a nice diversion. It didn't sound like, whatever else was on the pop chart. It was fine. And then you go to the single page on RYM and it's like, oh, a 1.7 rating, huh? That's how you feel about this. Joy.
It's like, I think it's the voice,
The voice is a lot.
The voice is a lot. I find it like very, like I said, I've just heard it via osmosis, but most of its like run, not most of its run, but some of its run has been in like the last 6 months where I haven't like had the chance to hear it. So I don't know. I cannot say I'm a fan at all, but I don't vehemently hate the song. It's kind of just there to me. But its rating on RYM is very, very low. People really hate it.
So, it's under a 2?
Oh, it's definitely under a 2, yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to get a refresher on it. I had to hear the beginning of it to remember what song you guys were talking about, because once again, I don't know the titles of these songs, but I've heard them. It's fine. It doesn't move, again, to use the phrase I've used a bunch of times on this episode, it doesn't move the needle one way or another. It's a pop song. It's on the radio. It's fine. It doesn't annoy me. Like, if I heard it a bunch of times, it would annoy me a lot more. But I guess because the voice is a lot, but it's a well-constructed pop song. It's fine.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the hatred it gets is because, like, anywhere other than America, it was played to death all through the, like, later part of 2018, later part of 2019, sorry. Like,
if I had a piano line every time I turned on my car and I listened to the radio, it would probably get on my nerves a little bit. I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see the voice grating as well, because it is a very high-pitched chipmunky. Like, it kind of reminded me of the first thing that came into my mind was, it's not nearly as bad as this song, but Go Low, Ludacris and Shauna.
the comparison I always think of is like someone trying to do a really mean Sia impression.
Yeah, I instantly thought Sia.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate because it's actually a sung line as opposed to a sample. But I was just thinking of the level of chipmunkiness, helium to the vocal.
Well, it's not like chipmunked. It's actually like her singing like that on purpose, not like an after effect sort of thing.
Oh no, I understand what you're saying, but that's the first.
Yeah, that's the vibe. That is the vibe.
Yeah, I definitely think of Sia, and Sia used to be an alternative
kinda
artist, right? Sort of, and then she blew up, and
Well, yeah, with 07.
Yeah. And then the last scene in 6 Feet Under.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last scene of 6 Feet Under, one of the best finales of right next to the last scene of The Wire as one of the best.
And the last scene of The Sopranos.
Yep.
Shout out to David Chase. Shout out to Alan Sepinwall for making David Chase dry snitch on the fact that everybody knew about the end of The Sopranos. Nobody knew he did that.
I still need to read that book.
Well, it wasn't from the book. It was like something from like the interview, I guess, that got leaked online, where David Chase is like, when Tony dies, oops, what? And then it got leaked online.
Like my read on the finale, like I think it was Emily Vanderwerf when she was doing the reviews over at AV Club. Like her take on it was that Tony dies sometime after the finale, but not necessarily right then, and that's the point.
My take on it when I saw it was that Tony's always going to feel like he's about to die, so he'll never be happy.
That's basically that's basically where I was at. Like Tony Soprano dies, and it doesn't matter if he dies right now or if he dies 10 years from now. This is how he's going to be living his life for however long it takes for that to happen.
And something I never thought of until we have this discussion right now was the contrast between the fact that he kills Christopher.
Yeah.
He gets
I think my read on it was the same as Patrick's. I think that was my first. I'm actually due for a rewatch. I was telling Patrick this a few months ago because I saw it once in full, probably about 5 years ago. About 5 years ago, and I have not seen it since. So I'm due for a rewatch.
Yeah, I have to say it really improved for me, especially the later seasons when I rewatched it like 5 years ago, I think. Because I used to be one of those people who's like, oh, after the second season, it's not worth it except for like 3 episodes. And then rewatching it, you remember like all the shit that happens in those last 4 seasons. Like, oh, how did I not respond to this earlier? But I mean, like, if you're coming from a position of always kind of liking the whole thing, like it might not be as revelatory. But for me, it was like, oh, I've been really sleeping on this whole show.
Well, I was into the show pretty much from start to finish. I remember in my first viewing of it. So, yeah, I just haven't rewatched it as much as I have. Like I've rewatched, Breaking Bad twice. I've rewatched The Wire multiple times. Stuff like that. I haven't rewatched The Sopranos in years, but I always loved the show.
One of the fascinating things about The Sopranos is that as it gets more popular, the show gets more outwardly bitter towards its audience.
Oh, yeah.
Outwardly antagonistic.
That's definitely something I only picked up on rewatch.
Like, the character of Ralphie is the first real signifier that David Chase really hates his audience. And the finale is, like, the whole last season really is just a comment on the audience.
Well, like, I just remember, like, the penultimate episode when Bobby Bacala dies. When, I might be thinking of, when Phil Leotardo gets run over, and you just have that, like, guy at the gas station turn to the camera, oh, shit!
Oh, yeah, you have, like, the Mook guy, oh, shit, and there's, like, a fucking close-up on the Ford, fucking, like,
it was the close-ups of the figurines in the model train shop when Bobby Bacala dies that I was thinking it is, like, he's mocking you for liking the violence, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, because I remember that I had friends and family who were just like, who's gonna get whacked? Who's gonna get whacked? The show's getting boring. No one's getting whacked. And it's like, and the name of the last episode is Made in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just to your point, the perception of it as well. Like I was talking about it, doing a rewatch of it a few weeks ago, and I think my mom actually said something about like, oh, I never really watched it because like I, always just thought it was super violent or whatever. And I was like, it's one of the most like depressing and like thoughtful shows I've ever seen, and it's just not like the perception of it is not the reality.
Well, and the thing that stuck out to me when I rewatched it was, like, the violence that does happen, it fucking matters. Like, I don't think I could rewatch the university episode ever again because of what Ralphie does to Tracy.
Right.
Jesus Christ, no.
Yeah, like, that is not an episode I ever want to see again. Once was fine. Thank you.
Not as bad as 6 Feet Under, That's My Dog, which is the ultimate episode I could never watch again. But
that's the one where he gets carjacked, right?
6 Feet Under is a tough rewatch.
That's My Dog is the one where he gets carjacked by the meth head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. With you there.
If you know, you know. Shout out to Trek One Daytona.
Yeah, that's that show's a tough rewatch.
Well, the thing I also remember about The Sopranos is that when it first came out, like, in Canada, it premiered on a rival network during the Olympics. Like, because in Canada there's more lax standards for standards and practices. So, like, they could show unedited episodes of The Sopranos in prime time.
Which is weird, though, because I remember I was reading the Kids in the Hall book, and they had some weird fights with standards and practices about Canadian airing, though.
Yeah, it might have just been a difference in what station was running it to, because, like, there's they were on the national, like, taxpayer funded.
Oh yeah, right. It was
whereas Sopranos was airing on one of the other, like, probably run by some billionaire in a castle somewhere in England, but
it was like Canadian Rupert Murdoch analog. But yeah, you're right. It was because they were on technically like public, like PBS Canada.
Yeah, which is why you had to wait to get Dr. Seuss's Bible, which is one of the funniest things they ever did.
Yes, it is. They couldn't do Laura, the My Ham Abound sketch, for whatever reason, because of that was some fucking good ham. Like, they couldn't air that first run.
Did not know that.
Yeah. Well, but also, like, as I remember, the first time I saw Mulholland Drive was on, like, terrestrial TV in Canada, like, with nothing edited out except for, there were commercial breaks in there, which was a weird experience.
Yet it still made no sense. Yet you still loved it.
Oh yeah. No, Mulholland Drive makes perfect sense.
For
Inland Empire, that's the one that makes no sense.
Oh, Inland Empire makes. I mean, Inland Empire owns, but Inland Empire also makes no sense. You just see Laura Dern be traumatized repeatedly for a few hours.
Like, honestly, my take on Inland Empire is that whatever interpretation I read of it before I watched it the most recent time, that's probably what I'll believe.
Yeah, I don't even. I would love to hear what Lynch said about it.
I mean, it's not like Lost Highway, which is kind of opaque, but is basically just the story of O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, Lost Highway is awesome. Love
Yo, Lost Highway. All right, I didn't think like when I heard the O.J. Simpson thing, I was like, yeah, he's full of shit. And because David Lynch's interviews just kind of make me mad. But David Lynch is the Kanye West of art cinema. Because I'll fucking listen to his interviews and I'm like, this guy's so full of shit. But then I'll watch his movie and I'm like, okay, I see what he's saying.
Yeah, the OJ thing kind of made Lost Highway fall into place for me. Like not one of the more recent times that I rewatched it, because that's just a movie that I will rewatch every year or so just because I have it on DVD and I want to. It really needs a better transfer though. I can't wait for there to be a Criterion edition of it.
Yeah,
I'm surprised there hasn't been yet.
I think they're slowly working their way through the David Lynch catalog, so it's probably coming soon.
Shout out to the worst review I've ever heard from the critic I respect the most is Roger Ebert's review of Blue Velvet.
Oh God, that's a terrible.
Where it didn't play what the movie was supposed to do, and he didn't like it for it.
Yeah, my favorite. Have you seen the clip from the Siskel and Ebert show where Gene Siskel is just mocking him the entire time he's going on his little rant?
Yes,
it's the best. Like, I miss Gene Siskel so much.
Gene Siskel was a bullshit raiser. Like, sometimes he was wrong, but he was... You know what the tagline for the Passion of the Weiss website is?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Cross? That's Gene Siskel.
That is Gene Siskel. Gene Siskel and Jeff Weiss. Jeff Weiss is the spiritual successor to Gene Siskel.
Just any time that I think of like Roger Ebert going on his little tirade about all the disrespect shown to Isabella Rossellini, and Gene Siskel's like, she's having coffee in Florence right now, Roger. She's fine.
but also, Ebert wrote one of the best things about Do the Right Thing when it came out.
Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert's one of my favorite reviewers of all time. That's why when he gets it so wrong, I get mad.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ebert definitely inspired me to read more film criticism, for sure.
Same with Pauline Kael. Like when Pauline Kael gets it wrong, I'm like, you're doing this with an agenda. Like you're writing with an agenda right now. You're willfully misreading something. Although with Roger Ebert on Blue Velvet, I feel like it's so frustrating because it's like the movie did exactly what it was supposed to do and you're mad at it. It's like
there's also times when he'll go back years later.
Roger Ebert on Blue Velvet is you went on a roller coaster and you're mad it was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need to reread that review. It's been a while since but I just remember being like, yeah, that you saw the same movie I did and yet you completely missed the point.
I feel like Ebert's one of the few critics I can think of though who does go back and be like, I was wrong. Like at the time, he'll do re-reviews. Actually, this was a classic, and I messed it up.
That is true. He's gone on 1 stars and gone back and 4-starred it. One thing Ebert didn't get was anti-comedy, like his Tim and Eric and Freddie Got Fingered reviews. I mean, I'm sure I'm probably in the minority on loving these films, but he did not get those films.
The thing is, I love the idea of Tim and Eric more than I actually like watching them.
Oh, I adore that movie.
I never tried the movie. I tried with Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Great job. And it's like, I see what you're doing, and I don't want to watch this. Thank you.
I tried with Freddie Got Fingered, and I'm just like, nope. But at the same time, I probably I like zany things sometimes, and that sort of comedy that isn't comedy, but it is. But I just wasn't. It wasn't hitting for me. But
Freddie Got Fingered is a satire on Adam Sandler's filmography, is what it basically boils down to.
I would say that, yeah. I hadn't even thought about it that way, but yeah, Tom Green and Freddie Got Fingered is the Adam Sandler man-boy character ratcheted up to its natural endpoint.
Yeah, it's almost like, have either of you seen the British sketch show Jam?
I have not.
I have, no.
Okay, then that reference will be lost on you, but I'll just say it for the whatever of the... the 5 people out there who know what I'm talking about, it's basically a jam sketch that's not actively uncomfortable.
I would say Freddy Got Fingered is actively uncomfortable, and that's what I love.
It's actively uncomfortable in a different way than Jam sketches, though. Like, the thing Jam's writer's room apparently was basically, okay, think of the most taboo subject you can think of. Now follow that to its logical endpoint. So there's things like the most indicative sketch I can think of is one where you see a couple arguing about her having caught him cheating on her or her friend catching him, and he's like, no, she didn't see what happened afterwards when I dragged her into the alley and raped her.
Well,
and that leads to her forgiving him.
Well, what you're saying reminds me of either Wonder Chosen, Eric Andre, or the Aristocrats movie.
It's very Wonder Chosen-y, but like scored with Warp Records back catalog.
Oh my god, I gotta see this shit.
It was up on YouTube last I looked. I'll try to send you links when I find them.
Kittenpuke, put that in the description. We have gone slightly off topic from our
little bit.
I think that says a lot about the alternative charts.
Yeah, they're boring as shit because all they're doing is ripping off previous, more successful, more interesting artists. Yeah. So how do we get here? How do we get where we're at right now in 2020 with this music? Like, we know Lil Peep. I've suggested Lil Wayne Rebirth, although Lil Wayne was pulling back, I think, from previous influences like Blink-182, Good Charlotte, that sort of stuff. Blink-182 better than Good Charlotte, obviously. Good Charlotte is the musical equivalent of COVID-19.
The worst.
So how do we get here? Like, what was the progression? How do we get? I mean, yes, we know that hip hop took over in the modern culture. Hip hop had the better songs, but like we got from butt rock, nu metal, etc., and mall punk to this weird faceless polygon.
I think that like back to like I think one of the first things we talked about how the big acts are kind of faceless genre tourists kind of. When you apply that to an algorithm that's trying to figure out what fits with that particular band's sound when they're popular, when you have a much wider swath of things that you're able to gather from, you're like wool gathering from a very, very broad base that doesn't give you a set identity. Whereas like if you go back 20 years when everything sounded like it wanted to be Bush or Nickelback or, worse on down the line from there, it was a very narrow definition of what would be on the chart. But because we're looking at a much broader base, it makes it more faceless somehow.
Yeah, I can see that. I pretty much agree with everything you said. Actually, that's a good like dissection of.
And I think another part of it is that even though it's still like part of the rock charts on Billboard, it isn't called alternative rock anymore and hasn't been for like a decade at this point. It's just alternative, which kind of opens it up even further because it's like we're not bound by this having to be guitar based anymore. We can look at like electronic stuff. We can look at the Billie Eilish or Lorde or people who aren't technically rock but are definitely an alternative to whatever is popular at the moment. And yet somehow also what is popular at the moment.
Yeah, it's like that's how you get some like indie tronica acts on there and stuff like that, or like even the Car Seat Headrest Hollywood being on there.
Oh yeah, can we talk about Car Seat Headrest, a band I never liked, but yeah, this is their everything now. So you would think I would like it better than their earlier shit that I didn't really care for, but yeah, it's super duper mid.
It's the most obnoxious parts of previous Car Seat Headrest stuff just ratcheted up to 11, and I hate it.
Yeah, I was not a fan of their album this year, which is a shame because I think out of a lot of the like straight up like revival acts, like we're going to revive Modest Mouse or whatever. I liked Car Seat Headrest. I love Teens in Denial still. I thought Twin Fantasy was good, and like I thought Will was a good songwriter, but on this one, it just didn't hit for me. This song or the album. I mean.
I haven't listened to the album yet, but like this is not a good sign if this is the single you're pushing.
No, it is one of the worst songs on the record. So, yeah.
But I kind of feel like this was spun out from the re-recording of Twin Fantasy last year, because like the way that he was actively trying to both distance himself from the first one and make it more current. It's just like, okay, like why are you doing this? The song was fine as it is. You don't need to change You don't need to talk. You don't need to take out the Dan Bejar reference, just because no one knows who Dan Bejar is anymore. Unfortunately, you don't Why are you actively trying to kneecap your own work?
Unfortunately, because the Destroyer record's way better than anything he's ever done. Also, who are you? Fucking George Lucas? Stop ruining your old shit. I don't even like your old shit. And you're making it worse. Fucking stop it.
Yeah, and I would have been here for just a straight up re-recording of Twin Fantasy, because I'm notoriously I'm pretty harsh on lo-fi production. So if you give those songs just a bigger, a more studio-y makeover, I would probably like them more. But you'd have to just keep the songs as they are. You can't be updating them or changing the what all the changes were for the worse, and I don't know why he made them. But I almost feel like, given the reaction to making a door less open, it seems like he's actively trying to alienate his fans for some reason, and I'm interested as to why that is. Because I don't think I've seen anyone who's defended that album.
No, it's pretty universally recognized as either mid or bad, depending on who you ask. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if his fan base is I wouldn't call his fan base insufferable or anything. I mean, I was part of it, so I'm not. But I wasn't part of the fan base oh my god, I'm standing Car Seat Headrest. No, but I think I generally enjoyed his music for the most part. But I don't think, I haven't listened to all of the really early stuff, so that stuff might not be good. But at least in, his music in the last 5 years, I had enjoyed. But at the same time, I feel like anytime you're an artist and you reach a certain level of accessibility, Car Seat Headrest was a name now. Not a huge pop name, but definitely a name in the general alternative sphere. He had transcended his original lo-fi indie rock trappings.
Yeah, this dude has a trash name and his song blows and his album's crap. Where's the Gorillaz songs on here? They put out 6 great singles and there's not one on the chart.
Which is weird, because they usually manage to scrape the bottom edge of the chart even when they're not hugely popular. They had Humility on there a couple of years ago, which is by far my favorite song by them since Plastic Beach.
Oh no, I think the Now Now is super underrated. I will go to the wall for that album. I don't think there's a bad song on there. I think it's really unfairly disparaged. I think everything they put out from this new project, except for the dumb interlude they stream troll by putting on streaming that people just click on because it says Gorillaz and they get 10 cents, like Soulja Boy taught us when he did rich shit on YouTube. It's thank you, 10 cents. Thank you, 10 cents. So he showed us how streaming worked back then. And yeah, those aren't songs, but the actual Gorillaz songs that they put out have all been great. Best shit they've done since Plastic Beach. I agree, and I love the Now Now. Not so high on Humans. I like some of Humans, but
not a fan of Humans for the most part.
Vince Staples' song on Humans is amazing.
That's a good song, yeah. Yeah, but I would have thought that to your point, Patrick, Aries, I feel why isn't that a big song?
It might just be an issue of if you, depending on how it's being distributed too, because a lot of this comes down to if you have a budget behind you who is pushing your music on into the right hands. I don't want to go so far as to say it's streaming payola or whatever, but there's definitely some element of what is popping up on the first 3 songs of Spotify's alternative playlist is not determined by the 3 songs that are most listened to on that playlist, sort of thing.
No, and they'll even artists will even tell you that sometimes it's definitely I'm looking at right now, actually. I'm going to go to my app and look at what is in the alternative rock the alternative playlist, and let's take a look. So we've got the new alternative, and Gorillaz is not here. This is different alternative, but I'm looking at today's alternative. Yeah, there we go. No, not seeing Gorillaz out here. So
right.
I don't know.
They're a really popular band, and also where's Phoebe Bridgers? She's
she's on the adult alternative charts.
Yeah,
her songs aren't adult alternative.
But like I said, that's just where like what we would have called indie rock 10 years ago is gone now. Like that's where Perfume Genius is charting right now with the best song of the year, On the Floor.
That is a great song. Yeah, interesting. Like, Perfume Genius getting chart. Good for him.
Yeah, it's not like chart. I don't think it's like cracked the top 30 yet, but it's like it seems to be on a rise right now, which I cannot wait for him to take over that particular format if he chooses to.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the question posed to you guys is, do we think that this micro genre sort of sequestering is good or bad? Because like Perfume Genius, Phoebe Bridgers, these people, these sort of artists are getting more exposure, I suppose, but are they? Are they really getting more exposure? Like, or are there just people who are going to listen to them anyway getting more avenues to listen to them?
It could be a little from column A, a little from column B. Because, like, I mean, as much as it seems like terrestrial radio and is dying and streaming playlists are taking over, like, there are still people who listen to terrestrial radio. Like, I work with a bunch of them. That's all we listen to in the back room at the grocery store I work at. That's what they play over the PA at the liquor store I work at. Like, there are still people who rely on the radio not just for, background noise, but to tell them about what is new and or popular. So okay. It's getting to an audience that wouldn't know them from like being music nerds like us.
I want to cut you off real quick. So how much of the shit that on this list and how much on the niche lists gets played on that radio?
The thing is that where I live, we don't have like an alternative station. We have a rock station that mostly like especially over the overnight playlist, which is what I'm usually listening to, because when you work in receiving, you work from 1 a.m. until the trucks are done. But they mostly pull from the classics era for that. You'll hear like the occasional song from this chart or an old alternative chart, but it's not like the main blood of the station.
Okay, so it's not a sample. Got it. Sorry.
Yeah, like if I had an alternative station in my city, I would be able to give you a better window into this. But like honestly, I'm pretty sure that not having an alternative station is why I can follow this chart from a distance and not be burnt out on all the songs like a lot of the people who make like the alternative rank lists on RYM that you'll see if you go to any of the songs pages. We were like, I've been hearing the song nonstop for 6 months. It's terrible. It's like I listen to the song on YouTube when I feel like it. It's great.
They stop making the list after like 3 weeks because they're sick of hearing the shit. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like because like what I think that a big part of why I have this like slight obsession with the alternative charts is because it was at a distance for me when I was growing up. And I didn't really know about, other than like the things that happened to cross over and were hits on Much Music or managed to get played on the rock station that we had in town. It wasn't until my mom and dad split up and he moved to Southern Ontario, where there's a much wider array of radio stations to choose from, that I actually had access to like this whole era of rock that I had been cut off from. And so like knowing that was out there made me want to find more of it. And that's how you get to where I am today.
Well, I suppose that's why this topic interests me, is that that's what I listened to when I was a child, was the alternative station. And it felt like it was actually an alternative. I don't think that exists anymore, but I don't know if that matters because no one I know listens to the radio.
Yeah, and the thing is, listening has gotten so fragmented that anyone, like you seek out fans of the band you're listening to, you don't seek out an entire genre.
Well, yeah. I'm not speaking about myself. I'm speaking about like, I'm ODB. I'm talking for the children right now.
Yeah.
Is it all streaming? Terrestrial radio doesn't matter. Like, how is what is alternative? I guess that was the question. Like, how is it defined, and how's it getting out there?
I mean, I wish I could look into like this, how this is like going back and forth between streaming and whatever is left of terrestrial radio. But like, I feel like it's. Streaming has really changed the game for all sorts of genres, but I feel like alternatives kind of gotten the worst and best of it in a way. Because like it's like the people who grew up on alternative, like me and you, and I don't know if Caleb is in this mode as well, but like us who grew up on the alternative format and had these ideals for it are looking at this like, well, what the fuck happened to my music? But it's also like it seems to be giving a platform to a lot of younger artists, especially. Which I think is valuable in a way, even if they're not the best artists on here.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's an interesting mix of acts that are slowly becoming legacy acts, where they were popular in the early 2010s or late 2000s, And then you have these like newer acts that have sprung up in the last 2 years that have made either a major impact on this chart or in the mainstream at large.
Yeah. And just be glad that we're not having this discussion 10 years ago when everything sounded like Mumford & Sons.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's still kind of here, but it's not like the dominant thing.
Yeah, shout out to Diplo for giving Mumford & Sons that horribly underlooked over, alternative artist a platform. Fuck you, Diplo. Yeah. That's what I want to say. Fuck you, Diplo. We're living off borrowed time. Thank you, Brent, for joining us. We are the alternative to liking Diplo. If you like Diplo, you can't listen to this podcast anymore. Our outro music is Stagnated Pace by Cankick, and we will see you next week. Have a good weekend.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.